Good evening, I'm Matt Mulcahy. Welcome to NBC3 News at 5. We're following breaking news tonight out of Syracuse, a massive $100 million settlement between the Catholic Church and survivors of sexual abuse. The joint agreement coming out of a bankruptcy proceeding, settling more than 100 lawsuits filed against the Diocese of Syracuse by those claiming to be victims of abuse at the hands of Catholic priests, employees, and volunteers. The $100 million is going to a trust fund to be distributed to survivors. Insurance payments could ultimately increase the size of that fund. Bishop Douglas Lucia releasing this video statement on the church's Facebook page earlier today.
As shocking as the settlement amount may seem, more appalling and heartrending to me is the pain and mistreatment experienced by the survivors of child and adult sexual abuse at the hands of those they thought they could trust. As the present leader of the Roman Catholic Church of Syracuse, I cannot apologize enough for the abuse which happened or for any neglect in dealing with it.
Well, tonight we have team coverage on this breaking news. Megan Coleman's outside the cathedral tonight after interviewing Bishop Douglas Lucia, the leader of the Diocese of Syracuse, as you just saw. She's asking what this settlement means for the future of the survivors and of the church community. Then at 5:30, Connor White speaking with survivors of abuse. He's gauging how they're receiving this settlement tonight. Right now, let's begin our team coverage with Megan. She joins us live outside the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception downtown. Megan.
Well, Matt, this historic settlement, years in the making, and today a profound apology from the very head of the Syracuse Catholic Diocese. I sat down with Bishop Douglas Lucia late today for a wide-ranging interview, Matt. We talked about what this settlement means for survivors, for the future of the Catholic Church, how it begins to rebuild and regain trust in our community.
How do you begin to put a price tag on the suffering of victims?
You don't put a price tag on it.
In your eyes, what does this settlement mean for survivors who have endured such terrible things that have happened to them?
I hope it really for them does symbolize or signify the great care and the great concern that the church does have for those who have been victimized.
Now, the bishop says that he hopes this settlement gives some sort of comfort to those survivors and that they understand how sorry the church is for what happened to them, not only the horrors of the sexual abuse that they endured by priests and others within the Catholic Church, but also the cover-up, not talking about it for so long and shifting priests between parishes. In his video message to the community today, Matt, Bishop Lucia talked about that, the path moving forward. Here's part of that conversation.
In your video message at the end, you talk about the importance of holding survivors in prayer and helping to build a new church. In your heart, do you truly believe that that is possible, to rebuild something new out of such tragedy?
Yeah, because I guess why I say that is we know sometimes even out of the most devastating natural disasters, out of fires and things like that, we talk of rebuilding from the ashes. And in the Catholic Church and other Christian churches, ashes are a symbol of repentance, but they're also seeing that from the ashes one can rise to new life, and one can rise to be even better and stronger. And that's what I really do see.
That's just part of my conversation with Bishop Lucia late today, Matt. New at 5:30, I asked him if he ever lost faith after hearing about all of those terrible things that happened to children and others over the years. We also talk about moving forward, how the Catholic community begins to repair itself after such an incredible scandal that has rocked the Catholic Church for so long. We also talk about moving forward to protect children and new protocols that are in place. I ask him if moms and dads can feel safe sending their children to the Catholic community. Matt?
Well, Megan, I am struck tonight by the stark change in the leadership of the Catholic Diocese. You know, I can recall 20 years ago, Bishop Moynihan was in the same seat that Bishop Lucia now sits in, and I interviewed him about this issue as it became a national issue, as we all became aware of what had happened. And he was more concerned at the time about the well-being of the priests who were being accused than he was the children who were the victims or the survivors in this case. Ultimately, his opinions came around a bit. But there was a generational shift that seems to have been necessary to get to this point, as Bishop Lucia now is certainly on the younger side of where that began. What did he say about paying all this money? This is $100 million, and the diocese apparently has some in the bank, but is also going to be asking local parishes to make contributions and Catholics in this community to, in essence, chip in for this.
Yeah, so it's going to be $50 million, Matt, that will be coming directly from the Syracuse Diocese. $45 million, as you noted, will be coming from those local parishes here in central New York. Another $5 million will be coming from other Catholic entities. But yeah, I asked him about that. You know, what do the parishes think about, being part of this settlement and chipping in, as you said, $45 million from their local parishes? He actually happens to lead one of the parishes here locally. He said he's had a lot of conversations with many of his parishioners. He says they seem to be fully in support of doing whatever they can to try to make this right for those abuse survivors. Matt?
Well, now to the story of the survivors of abuse. 3 years ago, when the diocese filed for bankruptcy, a committee to represent these men and women was formed. The man who chairs that committee is also a survivor. He spoke to our Connor White today about what that means for him and so many others. Connor?
Matt, the man that you're about to meet says he was just 15 years old when members of the church began abusing him here at St. Anne's in Manlius. But today, he smiled, sharing that this settlement is a major step forward, not only for him, but for hundreds of others. His story begins in central New York and continues today in Colorado. In 2021, a mass shooter killed 10 people at a supermarket in Boulder, Colorado. Kevin Brainey led the trauma response to help survivors.
And when folks are experiencing untreated trauma, as I did, that's when things can get very difficult.
Kevin's own trauma originates here. St. Anne's Church in Manlius. He was a freshman in high school when he says a priest began sexually abusing him, lasting for around 2 years.
I would, within the context of where I am today, Connor, I think that those experiences are with me, and I can say that they have certainly driven the choices that I've made and my commitment to finding and identifying ways to help myself and others find that sense of relief and acknowledgement we're experiencing today.
The Roman Catholic Diocese of Syracuse has agreed to a $100 million settlement that will eventually be paid out to more than 400 abuse victims. For the past 3 years, Kevin has served as chair of the official committee of unsecured creditors, representing survivors and working with the church on this agreement.
Justice is not done yet, but it's definitely heading in the right direction.
Part of the agreement is for the diocese to work on expanding and improving methods of protecting children, with Bishop Douglas Lucia offering an apology that is rare from a high-ranking member of an institution that has often failed to properly handle a global abuse problem in its ranks.
I have found him to not only say what he means, but also follow through with actions.
For Kevin, he's hoping that this can be an opportunity to move forward, knowing that nothing will fully erase what some church members have done to survivors.
There's no value of money, no amount of money that can undo the harms of the past. You just can't.
Still, Kevin says he's more trusting of the church now than he has been in decades. Are you still a Catholic yourself?
I have been in some really dark places with my faith. But I think, and even to the degree that I'm smiling as I'm talking about this right now, gives me that sense of hope that whether I'm a Catholic today or not, or whatever I might be in the future, faith is an integral part of who I am and who I always will be.
There are upcoming court dates that will sort out some of the nitty-gritty of how that $100 million settlement is actually going to be divvied up. Kevin says that survivors will hear more information in the coming weeks. Reporting in Manlius, I'm Connor White.
Well, Connor, it shows the length of the process it's taken to get here over a 20-year period of the nation realizing the extent of the problem, and all of us in Central New York realizing it did happen right here in this Catholic diocese. Has Kevin been able to be in contact with other survivors about this news? I assume as the head of the committee, he must communicate with others. Any other feedback from them about this?
He has. He says that he has been working with a number of people who are now thrown across the country, mostly originating here in Central New York. Some of his fellow committee members have gone through similar acts of abuse that he had to endure. And over this time period, these decades that he's had to deal with this, he's found ways to heal. He says that even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, he wouldn't necessarily have been up for the conversation that we had this afternoon, Matt.